Hello, hello. I'm Amber Lee Forrester, and I'm here with Live to Thrive. I am a purpose-driven entrepreneur, a certified life and business coach, a positive psychology educator, and the author of Blooming with Intention, a personal mastery and life skills workbook for teens and young adults. And today, I have the pleasure, the absolute pleasure, of speaking with Meryanne Loum-Martin, a lawyer turned world-renowned boutique hotel owner. Hello, Meryanne, and welcome to Live to Thrive.
Hello, Amber. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'm just marveling at your background in your beautiful boutique hotel, the Jnane Tamsna in Marrakech, Morocco. I received an email from you, and I was very excited to hear of how you're still thriving throughout the quarantine and keeping your business alive. And so we're going to talk about your business and some of the challenges that you've overcome. But let's first start with just talking about your bio. So you are the owner and you're running the 8-acre boutique hotel, the Jnane Tamsna in Marrakech, Morocco, with 24 rooms, 5 swimming pools, and a clay surface tennis court. The Jnane Tamsna is the only Black female-owned boutique hotel in Morocco. Phenomenal. And some of your clientele has included the likes of movie stars Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise and designers Giorgio Armani and Donna Karan. But the woman behind it all is fit for a movie herself. And that is you. When I read your bio and I read about your accomplishments, the pivots that you've made in your career, and even just looking at your hotel and what you've created in this beautiful space, I spotted some of your top character strengths. I'm going to take a stab at this and guess. I'm always fascinated by what people's character strengths are and how they've utilized them. So in you, I see attention to beauty and excellence, in the way, the detail that you have put into your hotel. We can just see in the background some of the beautiful plants and the furniture that you have there. I also notice bravery to have set out as a pioneer in your space and accomplish what you have is a courageous feat, and it is really pretty amazing. I also spot leadership. You are a leader, and you work with your team in keeping everyone aligned and giving an amazing customer experience for the guests who stay with you. I had the pleasure of staying with you, and everything was just so perfectly laid out, and your staff is so wonderful and so polite. I see your zest for what you're doing. You see your passion comes through very clearly in your work and in the environment that you've created. So Meryanne, what would you say are your greatest strengths, and how have they served you throughout your career?
Well, perseverance is certainly there. Determination, energy, creativity, and also I would say, I think that I believe my intuition. I believe in my instinct very, very strongly. And this is what has driven me, I would say, since I was a child, knowing what was right to do for me at a certain time. And I think that my instinct has never failed me. So I would say that this is, and also never considering things impossible. I know what is impossible for me, for example, is being an engineer. I'm really bad at math, geometry, everything which has to do with science, I'm really bad. But in terms of creativity, I'm very comfortable. So I think that my strength has always been to stay in the sphere of intellectual and creative comfort and not try to do things I'm not competent for.
So that's interesting, because knowing your story of pivoting from a career in law into the space of being a boutique hotel owner, it feels as if you had some realization possibly that there was something more fit for you. So would you talk a bit about that and how you found yourself opening this boutique hotel?
Well, you see, I'm an award-winning lawyer. I won a very prestigious competition in Paris. I was a lawyer in Paris. I'm French. And so I cannot say that I moved to another career because the other one was failing. It was not at all the case. I have always wanted to be an architect since I was a child. And I went to architecture school very young because I finished high school 2 years before the average time. And I could not get into third year. In France, it's about 7 years to become an architect. So the first and second year, everything which was linked to creativity, to art history, to conceiving spaces was going extremely well. But then you have minor credits to get into third year, which are connected to physics, to chemistry, and to math. And this it's just impossible for me. It's just like a blank. I can't do it. So it was a big, imagine, so I was like 18, and all my life I knew what I want to do is to build, to design and to build. And imagine I was a very good student in high school, and after these 2 years at the School of Architecture of the Beaux-Arts in Paris, not knowing that because of minor credits, your whole life that you have planned is not going to happen was an enormous shock. And recently I was speaking about it with my father. My father is 96 and he has all his head. And he was telling me, do you remember how devastated you were when you couldn't get into third year architecture? And I think this was an enormous, so I went to law school. I'm from a lawyer's family. I'm fourth generation on my mother's side and second on my father's side. But my parents never told me you have to do this or that, oh, you want to be an architect, great, And so I went to law school and became a lawyer and it was going well. But I always had in me this kind of itching thing. I want to build. And fortunately, Morocco gave me the opportunity Marrakech gave me the opportunity to do a first project. And this project was all over the press in a way that I could not even conceive in my wildest dreams. I think it gave me, and it was not the hotel, but it was another project before. And it gave me the confidence to understand that there are ways to arrive when you have a real passion and a real love for something. It's not because you didn't get the degrees that you may not reach it and that you may not be good at it. And I think that if there's any kind of lesson that people can learn from my life is that if you really love something and you're meant to do that, you'll find a way. You don't let anything get in the middle of your way. If you're done for that, you'll reach it. So I was saying that a few years ago, one of my very, I would say, immense pleasure was that the association, an association of French architects was having a convention in Marrakech, and they chose my place to host their gala dinner. And they arrived and I greeted them and I made them visit my personal house and the hotel, and they said, who's the architect here? And I said, well, someone you didn't think was good enough to be part of part of your group. And so it made them very curious. Oh, did you go to French architecture school? Yeah, and I told them my story, and they said, you see, if you have a lot of.
So what are some of the barriers that you've broken in accomplishing the goals that you have in life?
Well, it's difficult. I think that the barriers are something that you create in your own mind, because if you ignore hurdles, then if you consider them as little bumps which you can turn into opportunities, A lot of people tell me, oh my God, when I was a lawyer in Paris, everything was going fine. And my friends understood that I was planning to drop everything and to move into this design, construction, hospitality business in Morocco. They were thinking I was out of my mind because, the construction field is a very masculine field. I didn't have the degrees. I didn't speak the language. I'm not Moroccan. I'm a female and I'm a Black female. So in a country which is in a trade, plus a country which is mostly run by men, everybody thought I was out of my mind, but it never crossed my mind that it was impossible, never. So I don't know. I think the barriers are very much psychological, how do you say, breaks that people put on themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So I hear a lot of confidence coming from you, which is beautiful. Where did that come from? Is it something that your parents help you to find? This is something that you found in yourself? Where could you say that you first identified yourself as being confident, and where may that have come from?
I think that it comes, as I told you before, I stay in a sphere where I know in terms of confidence, so beyond being in a sphere of comfort, because you cannot have any confidence if you know the place is not for you, So I had a very big job in a corporate. I was off, and I tried for 6 months, but I just didn't like it at all. And I knew it would not work for me. In terms of where does it come, this confidence, I absolutely believe that diversity is a strength. And it comes from when I was a child and a very brilliant mother who instilled in me a lot of things, making me understand how lucky I was to have so many experiences, to having lived 3 years in communist Russia as a child. From the age of 7 to the age of 10, we lived in Russia, and he was the ambassador of Senegal for 10 years. He was called by the president, and the president asked him, because of his education and degrees, if he wanted to join the foreign service. And so he joined the foreign service for 10 years and then went back to his law career. And for 3 years, he was the Senegalese ambassador in Moscow. And it was a tough communist country. And I understood there because, from the age of 7 to the age of 10, I was living over 3 different worlds. The world of total freedom when I would come to visit my grandparents in France, where you can go to the cinema, you can buy ice cream, you can buy, everything is there. The bubble world of the diplomats in Moscow, where most of the kids were treated like children by their parents, and the world in which my mother pushed me, which was the Russian communist kids world. Because she, for 3 years, every morning, she would tell me, open your eyes, open your ears, and remember everything, because you are living an experience that no other children is having. And in the morning, I would go to the international school, the French school, and in the afternoon, she had turned one room into like a little classroom, and she managed to have kids from the neighborhood, Russian kids, to come. So I learned Russian, I spoke Russian, I was part of the neighbor. In each neighborhood, you have a cultural center for communist youth, and I was registered there, and of course, I was the only Black kid everywhere, all my childhood. And there, where everything was so controlled, you had the uniform, you had the brooch with Karl Marx, Engels, and Lenin, and you had to, sing things in Russian, and, it was just like being in a little army, but the culture was totally controlled, You had access to classical music, or to traditional Russian folklore music. And I think that living between these three worlds constantly gave me a sense of the importance of being diverse, and that it's a confidence which has never left me. And also a sense that you have to find a way to resist, you know? For example, I'll give you an anecdote which made me think a lot when I was a child. I had a piano teacher, and who was this beautiful Russian woman, very funny, very bubbly, and became a good friend of my mother. And my mother would take me to my piano classes twice a week. And in fact, you know, in Moscow, the music authorized by the government, because everything was so controlled, the music authorized by the government was classical music or Cuban music, because Cuba was communist. So you would have all the big bands from Cuba coming to give concerts, but you know, the Russian people could not listen to the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, to anything which was bad Western stuff. We're talking about the 60s, you know, when we were there when Kennedy was assassinated, for example, John Kennedy. So every time we would arrive to my piano class, there was salsa music blasting all over the neighborhood. And we would arrive to her apartment, and she would, you know, start blinking her eyes and laughing with my mother. And I did not understand what was so funny about that. And after a while, my mother explained to me, this is called cultural resistance, because it's music from Puerto Rico, which belongs to the United States. And all of the Russians don't see the difference between Cuba and Puerto Rico. So this is the way your piano teacher is in her own world, showing her freedom, you know.
Wow. Wow. And that's an example that you got at such an early age.
Yeah, it was probably like 8 or, you know, something like that. So I think this has always given me confidence, the sense of being diverse is a strength, and no one could take this away from me.
Yeah. So you talked earlier about your intuition. And so how do you tap into your intuition, and how has it guided you on your career?
Well, you see, intuition, creative, you find ways, you know. For example, I never wanted to take the bar exam, because I thought I will be an artist, I will be an architect, I will be a creative person. And I went to law school by default because I couldn't continue my architecture studies. So I went to law school because you need a degree, but I never thought I would be a lawyer. When you go to law school and you want to take the bar exam one day, there's a curriculum. You know, you have a choice of subjects, and you have to take specific subjects which will lead you to being able to take the bar exam. And I avoided all of these subjects because I was sure I would never need to take the bar exam. And then I finished my master's degree in law, and I couldn't find a job in Paris, and I moved to New York, and it was tough. You know, I went to New York without a job, without anything. I was waiting. I was doing what every young person does, you know, having several jobs. During the day, I was working at Bloomingdale's because they had something called the Fête de France, and they needed people speaking French. And let's say like until 5 in the afternoon, I was working at Bloomingdale doing this special French promotion with class, like 2 or 3 months. And I met a lot of people there because, of course, no one, you know, there was a newsstand, and I was the person selling French newspapers. And they had created a newsstand like in Paris. And most people thought maybe, you know, until I start speaking, people cannot see where I am from. And I met very famous French people. who would happen to be in New York and who would come and buy their newspaper. And I would recognize them because I would see them on TV in France. And I would speak to them in French and say, oh, hello, how are you, Mr. So-and-so? What are you? And one of them was so surprised. He's like, where are you from? What are you doing here? I said, well, I finished my law school in Paris. I couldn't find a job, and I came to New York to look for a job. And he said, okay, I'm going to help you. And he introduced me to various people, and I ended up having a real job because so I was, after Bloomingdale's, I was working in a restaurant at night from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. It was the only restaurant open 24 hours. It was in the building called the Seagram building. On the ground floor, they had a famous restaurant called the Four Seasons, and below they had a place called La Brasserie. And I was a hostess there from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then I would go back home, sleep a little bit, and then rush to Bloomingdale's to work. I mean, it was crazy time. Mm. And to tell you about the intuition, you know, I'm French, so after a while I had to go back. I stayed in the US a certain time and then find a real, in quote, a real job in the bank. And then I had to go back to Paris for visa reasons. And I was a bit lost, you know, because if you have, the French people have quite a narrow mind. If you have studied law, and you're not a lawyer, they're going to put you in the legal department of a corporate company, which was hell for me. That was out of question. So I started, my father's lawyer, I started working in his firm, and I realized that it was much more interesting than I thought. But what could I do anyhow? I was not going to take the bar exam because I had none of the right curriculum to take the bar exam. And here I am in Paris, wondering what is going to be my future. And I bump into an old friend of mine on the street. And he tells me, oh, you're back from New York. What are you doing? What are you waiting to take the bar exam? And I tell him, look, we are in July. I'm sure that all of the, you know, places that you can register are closed. And as you know, I never took any of the subjects to lead to the bar exam. He told me, look, you have 24 hours to go and register in this specific university, and I will also take it. And he had also had another career, but he had taken the right subjects to take it one day. And I'm sure that you can find, I'm sure that it will be fun. So I went. I had all the qualifications to apply, you know, to register, I had all the degrees, but I didn't take the right subjects within the degrees. You know, you can have a master's in law, but if you haven't taken specific subjects, you're not ready to take the bar exam. So here I am. I'm registered to take the bar exam. I have nothing, I have other legal qualifications, but not the one leading to this exam, which is very difficult. And for 1 week, I didn't really realize what I had put myself in. And then after a week, I said, okay, it's out of question that I'm going to fail. So I need to find a way because, you know, if you write it, it's not things that you cross like in the US. You have to write essays, you know. And so you really need to know what you know. Of course, it's very difficult. I took the New York bar later. It's very, very, very difficult in the US, but it's a different. And so I realized, you know, if I get this exam, I'm fourth generation of lawyers. There's no way I'm going to miss it. But how can I catch up 4 years of education when I'm going to be competing with much younger kids, because they hadn't gone to architecture school before and all that, much younger kids who have been dreaming all their life to become lawyers and who know by heart everything you're supposed to know, when I know nothing. So this is where, you know, when you're creative and you have intuition, you can create a strategy. Mm-hmm. So I said to myself, it's very simple. These professors who are going to read the essays, they're going to read hundreds of them. And more or less, they're all going to talk about the same thing, the question of the subject, but some will speak better and some will not speak well. If I follow the general strategy, I'm not going to make it because I can't catch up 4 years. I mean, we are like mid-July and the exam were early September, you know? So I said, okay, so I have to write in a way that catches their attention immediately and goes beyond the subject. By an incredible coincidence, I had heard, I think on TV or in a magazine, I had read something about a brilliant law professor a French guy who had just come back from Stanford and who had written a book about the philosophy of law. So I said, okay, I have to find this book and I have to find all the books which allow me to analyze a problem at a level which takes my view at the next step, at the next level. Because if you are able to analyze them in a way which has so much content, the very specific problem that you're supposed to be solving, because you know all of the articles of law which I didn't have time to learn, then it will be obvious for the guy who reads it that I know how to analyze a legal problem. Because when you're a lawyer, this is what you're supposed to do. And you can always find the time afterwards to learn all the jurisprudence and all of that. But if you don't know how to analyze a case, it's an issue. So I went full in all the books about the history of law, the philosophy of law, the psychology of law, everything. And I had amazing degrees. And honestly, it was, if I had not had intuition to know that there was another way to reach the point, to be different, I would not have made the exam.
Intuition, strategy,
yes.
and you passed.
I passed with very good grades. And so this was the written part, and so you have to have good grades to get to good. After the written part, you have oral part, and for the oral, it was the same thing. I took the subject to a different level. So you have like a panel of law professors interrogating you on a subject, and they give you a subject, and you're supposed to talk about what you've been learning, in these 4 years of school. And the first sentence was spot on the subject. And then I said, but maybe it would be really interesting to put the subject in the general context. And I took it somewhere else. And the guys were just like listening to me, and I had a good grade. I think it's the same thing for a lot of things. Try to be different.
Yeah.
And I think that it is something very important for our community now, with all of the initiatives, which should be giving a lot of strength to the young people of our community. Never be afraid to be different. You have to control the average knowledge and take it beyond. Be different.
That's an amazing lesson and amazing advice to share with young people now. And especially being that I heard you referencing that a lot of times you were the only brown person in the room. You were different. And instead of standing in that story, you stood on top of that story, and you let that unique part of you stand out instead of letting it shrink you. You made it grew you into even more confidence for who you are and how you're able to show up into rooms. So thank you for sharing that story.